You hear the bells first, iron on leather, a rhythm that doesn't hurry because winter never has to. The street is a ribbon of frost and candle smoke, and at the far end of it something with horns takes its time in the glow. Children press against their mothers. Men hold mugs close. The old church clock lifts up a single cold note and lets it fall. A chain drags once. A bundle of birch switches taps the stones like a knuckle. Then the mask lifts into the light. Carved wood, painted eyes, a mouth of teeth made to terrify and never bite. A hand as big as a skillet offers a warning sweep you can feel in your chest. The crowd breathes together. The bells answer for everyone. This is Krampusnacht, the night Krampus walks. In old Alpine towns where December means snow that remembers your name and roofs that carry a second roof of white, St. Nicholas comes on the 6th with blessings, and on the night before he travels with a shadow. The saint brings gifts, a tangerine, a walnut, a small sweet tucked in a shoe, and Krampus brings consequence, a rattle of chains, a sting of twigs against your coat, a reminder that cupboards once went thin in winter and that keeping promises kept you warm. The pair is older than any one village and more recent than the last child who swore she was good and meant it. One hand gives, one hand warns. Both belong to the same story. What you see on the street, horns, fur, clattering bells, the low growl that is more theater than threat, isn't a monster from nowhere. It's a costume with a memory. Long before postcards painted him with red tongue and hooves, long before television borrowed his outline for a movie one year and a meme the next, mountain people used masks to give a face to the season. When summer dies all at once and the forest goes black around the edges, it feels natural to step into a shape that looks like the thing you fear and teach it to walk where you want it to. You put it on, and in putting it on, you keep it from living in your house. The materials are the language. The mask is wood, linden or maple if you can afford it, cut by a hand that knows the difference between menace and cruelty. The horns are goat or cow, heavy with their own history. The fur is sheep, darkened with soot that rubs off on a sleeve and makes a mark you carry home. The chain clanks because sound travels in winter better than words. Around the waist hang bells the size of a fist, tuned to a pitch that slides under conversation and sets the heart to a manageable panic. In the bundle is birch, switches bound with twine. It's not meant to hurt, it's meant to be remembered. People will tell you he is the devil tamed for a parade, but that's not quite right. Krampus is a household fear made public, a winter spirit translated into Christian calendar. When Nicholas crosses the threshold, he carries lists and blessings. When Krampus crosses, he carries the old rules that still work. Tell the truth, keep the fire tended, don't wander after dark without saying where you're going. He doesn't work alone. In some places there are whole troops, the pass they call them, men who move like a single creature with many masks, watched at the edges by neighbors who know which steps are too close and when a joke turns into a thing that needs a hand on a shoulder. On paper, the rules are simple. On the 5th of December, Krampusnacht, the procession comes. On the 6th, St. Nicholas Day, gifts appear if you've earned them. In practice, the knights braid together. Old men, who used to play Krampus, and now play the saint switch roles depending on knees and weather. A boy who shook every year grows into a man who pulls the mask over his face and discovers that if you breathe slow, the world fills with the kind of silence you can steer. That feeling, the deep breath quiet inside the mask, is its own history too. There were years when these parades were frowned on or banned, when officials decided that boys with horns made uglier trouble than they cured. And there were years when the same officials brought them back because it turned out that giving a shape to fear was a public service. What survives is the practical heart of it, a community borrowing old bones to carry a new winter. Listen to the bells from inside a shuttered room, and you can map the street by sound. First, the scatter of children running ahead. Then, the clump of boots. Then, the long wave of bells that says, "This isn't one mask or three, it's a tide." Look at the faces by candlelight, and you see the same story told differently in each one. In Salzburg, the hair is longer and the horns sweep back. In Tyrol, The teeth are cleaner and the paint is pale. In a valley in Slovenia, a Krampus mask might look more like a shaggy cousin called a parkelj. But when he lifts his bundle and rakes it through the air, you feel the same wind. In South Tyrol, a farm boy who never cared for festivals learns to walk on hooves because his grandfather asked him to, and the town claps because it remembers the man in the same wood and the same walk 30 winters ago. There is a small ritual in a kitchen that repeats itself all across a mountain range and says as much as the parade does. A child leaves a shoe by the door. A parent, conspirator, historian, and stagehand fills it with a clementine, a few nuts, maybe a chocolate wrapped in the copper color that looks like churchlight. The child wakes to proof that rules are seen. Once a year, the house turns into a theater where everybody knows all the lines and still cries at the good part. You can track the rest of the story on paper if you need to. Shops in Vienna sold Krampus postcards, Krampuskarten, more than a century ago. Little prints of the horned figure yanking a wicked boy by the ear while St. Nicholas looked on, half amused and fully approving. Teachers collected the cards and pretended they were for moral instruction, but they knew they were for the same reason ghost stories are for: to rehearse fear safely while the stove burns hot. When the world gets nervous, out come the scissors and stamps. When it relaxes, out come the bells again. The tradition breathes like a man under a wooden face, slow, steady, private, and public by turns. Walk down that same frosty street and you can see how the rules keep the night from becoming a mouth that eats you whole. The masks are tall, the presence is big, and the shove toward the curb looks like chaos, but it isn't. There's a person at the edge who knows everyone by name. There's the woman with a band of ribbon on her sleeve who taps a horn with 2 fingers, and the horn bows like a dog that recognizes a command. The mask bends, the chain rattles for show, the switch kisses boots, and the little boy who refused to learn his rhyme finally says it into a glove filling with snow. I kept the door closed. I fed the goat. I helped my sister carry wood. And the mask nods, because that is what the mask has been waiting to hear. A sugar cookie changes hands, and the world returns to its proper size for 1 season more. Not all winters are fair. There were times when cruelty wore the fur and made a night dangerous. In some places, rules broke and had to be remade. The reason the tradition persists at all is because communities got good at telling the difference between theater and harm. In a village that remembers doing without, you don't waste a child's fear. You shape it. You don't fling a mask into a crowd and call it old ways. You put a person under it who can make their voice low without making their heart small. There are other figures at the edge of the light with names that change when valleys do. An angel with a star on a stick, a man in a bishop's hat who doesn't look like a bishop until he smiles, and then looks like every storybook in one. A handful of shaggy cousins with names that sound like snow rolling off a roof. Perchten, Buttenmandel, Tatzelwurm. Echoes that don't belong to one village or one language. When they move together, the street becomes a map of a whole range of mountains breathing in the same tempo. This is not a single character. It's a choir. The lead voice just happens to growl. A thing you learn standing in that crowd. The mask is heavy. The man inside stumbles sometimes, not because he means to lean but because the horns pull like a thought you can't put down. He shakes his head and the bells answer him. He raises the switches high and then lowers them to shoulder height because the height is the joke, and the joke is the point, and the point is not a bruise. He looks straight at you and then looks past you to make sure there's room for a child to stand behind your legs and see only what she can carry from the night into her dreams. Inside the mask, the man is counting steps. 5 to the corner. 7 to the bench where the baker's wife always sits. 3 more to the door that will open on the line in the wood floor you can feel with your heel if you know where to set it. He hears the bell of the saint somewhere behind, and to the right, and lifts his chin so the horns clear the archway when they pass under the old house and into the older square. He can taste pitch and sheep and a little of his own breath, and he is happier than he looks because the town gave him a job that matters for one night. To be what the children fear in daylight and what the children are allowed to touch in the dark, the saint speaks. He is softer than the bells and louder than the chain. He names the year, calls for the good, asks for better from those who forgot they could be. He is what you want from December. Justice with a smile big enough to make justice feel like a handshake. Beside him, Krampus makes the same motion the whole town makes when the stove smokes. He wafts the air with his hand, and the crowd laughs because the monster is part human, and the human is part monster, and everybody knows it's true and is relieved to have it said out loud in a language of bells. There's a moment that always lands, the one the old people watch for, the one the young ones don't know is coming. It happens when the saint gives out the last orange and the last walnut and the last small sweet, and the bags go light and the basket on the saint's back is only a basket again. The bells don't stop. They change time. The chain doesn't drag. It lifts and falls like punctuation, and the whole square understands at the same instant that the show is about to step back across the border into story. You can feel the cold decide to be colder. You can hear the wind turn the corners of roofs into flutes. What comes next is the part that lives in bones. The masks move in a circle one last time. The saint raises a hand, not to bless, not exactly, but to close the book without slamming it. The children open their pockets to rehearse the inventory. Fruit, nuts, something sweet, and a memory with a shape and a sound. The men with horns pass through the doorway that is not a doorway, an alley with a light that never works. And they are gone, except for 2 sets of tracks in the powdered snow and 1 smudge of soot on a stone where a hand steadied itself against the cold. All of this is theater, and none of it is fake. People who live by a mountain don't waste rehearsal. They let it teach. In a century when houses shine with screens, even at midnight, and fear travels faster than a bell can carry it, the old shape still does its job. A community calls its own name out loud, assigns roles, and inhabits them long enough to remember the point. That winter is dangerous, that kindness is strong, that the space between those truths can be bridged by a wooden face and a string of bells. There are photographs of men in these masks from 100 winters ago, sepia faces with eyes like wells. There are photographs from last year, LEDs in the distance, a Starbucks cup abandoned near a lamppost, a child in a puffer jacket half hiding behind a coat that belonged to her grandmother. Between them, the same flare of torchlight on horn, the same breath turned silver, the same hand lifting the same switches high enough to be a joke and low enough to be a lesson. We have changed the world, and the world has not changed the way a bell finds your heart in a street with a church at the end of it. If you want a rule you can keep, it hides in the pairing. Gifts and warnings. Joy and shadow. Nicholas and Krampus. Every tradition that survives winter has the same spine. Reward what you want more of. Name what you fear. Make a place to stand when the night is longer than the day. If you've ever opened a door on December and felt the cold say your name like it was born to it, you know why a town would build a creature that can walk the street with teeth and not bite. You know why a child would learn to say a rhyme about wood and chores and truth. You know why a man with a carved face would nod as if he could see through wood, because sometimes you can. A final loop through that square tells you everything we keep trying to remember. Firelight on glazed snow turns the world into a map you can read with your feet. The saint's staff catches the same star twice. The bells talk to the stone and the stone talks back. Somewhere a door closes on a shoe with a tangerine sitting inside it like a small sun. Somewhere else a hand scrubs soot off a cheek and laughs, because no one stays clean in a story that matters. In the dark between windows, the masks hang on hooks and drip snow onto boards that have seen 100 Decembers, and a grandfather who can't lift the horns anymore runs a hand over the carved brow and whispers the name of the man who made it from a tree whose roots still hold the hill in place. If you were expecting the monster to win, you will be disappointed. If you were expecting the monster to lose, you will also be disappointed. The monster goes home because the people asked him to go home, and because he knows he is needed again next year. The saint goes home because saints are people with jobs, and tomorrow is another kind of work. The bells keep a little of the street in them, so when they hang quiet, they sound, just faintly, like a village wrapped in its own breath. The point isn't punishment. The point isn't even presence. The point is the memory of being held at the edge of fear and then put back down gently on the safe side. The point is the rehearsal. When the real cold comes, you remember how to stand. When a real decision arrives, you remember how to speak your rhyme. When darkness tries the latch, you remember how the mask paused at your doorstep and chose not to cross. For one night each year, a town becomes a story that teaches itself. The words are bells and chains and carved eyes and the smell of sheep's wool and pitch. The plot is simple. Be good, be brave, be kind, be home before the dark gets ideas. The ending is always the same and somehow always earned. The door closes on warm light, the bells go small, the horn's shape becomes a coat on a peg. And whatever else the year forgot to tell you, this much is certain when the last bell stops moving. Winter is long, and we belong to each other while we wait it out. So if you hear bells on a December wind and a chain that speaks better than anyone in a crowd, step to the curb, keep your hands where the light can praise them, and let the old fear walk past without owning your heart. When the saint's basket is empty and your pocket is heavy with fruit, say your rhyme again, for yourself this time, because you're older now, and the rules are yours to keep. Then go inside and set the tangerine on the table where everyone can see that the shadow came to town and left you better for having looked it in the eye. And when you pass a hook with a mask sleeping on it in the back room of a hall that smells like wood and yeast and snow, touch the brow gently. Tell it the town will need it again next year, when the bells know your name and you're grateful to hear it.